Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Whatcom County Ferry Advisory Committee meeting June 5th to order. And my name is Pam Gould. I'm the chair. And the first thing I'm going to do is call the roll. Janice Cottrell. I believe she is not available tonight. Richard Fry.
Aye.
Pam Gould, yes. Diane Harper, here. Todd Legacy.
Present.
Carol Lant. Is she on Zoom? Let me see. Yes. Can you hear her or can we hear her?
I can hear you.
Okay. We can hear you.
So mute me again.
Thank you. Thomas Philpott is traveling and Catherine Shorney. Here. Great. Okay, we're going to take a moment to salute the flag and have a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening. I'd like to welcome all the members of the committee here and on Zoom. I'd like to the only county staff here is actually our county council representative, John Scanlon, who's here with us tonight. Gary Poole is going to be with us from Seattle remotely. And so those are going to be our two speakers to begin with. So the first order of business is, does anyone have any changes to the agenda for tonight? I have an item about the Whatcom County Ferry Advisory Committee terms. Can we add that item in after we have the discussion about moving the meeting? Yes, great. I will add it there. Thank you. Otherwise, we can accept the agenda as written, unless there are other comments. Okay, everyone received the minutes from May 1st, 2024. Are there any adjustments to the minutes or changes? Hearing none, I assume we would hear from Carol if she had anything to say on Zoom.
Thumbs up.
Okay, so the minutes will stand as written. Thank you. All right, so tonight, this has been a busy couple of weeks for the county. There's been some very thought-provoking and surprising news in various county council meetings. And so I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have Gary Poole, our senior master. He's going to sign in from Seattle, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about what's happening with the chief and dry dock. And then after that, John Scanlon is going to address some of the current county issues. So Gary.
Hi, Pam. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Sweet. Okay.
We can see you too.
You can see me in the lovely house I'm having to stay in here in Seattle. I'll give you a panoramic of my bedroom real quick. There you go.
Well,
that's my
thank
bedroom.
you. I know it's not fun.
So a little update. You guys would like a little update about what's going on at Dry Dock. This has been a long one, and I apologize for the length, but the amount of work we've had to accomplish this year has been dramatic. Things are going ahead as planned. We seem to be right on schedule. We did our steel work on the bottom of the hull, as we said earlier, and it went well. The Coast Guard was very pleased with the work that Lake Union has done so far. on that. We have the main engine, the number one main engine has been changed. It's back in place, and they are, as of right now, as we speak, they have a second shift welding the steel back over the engine room where the engine was lifted out of. The decks have been sandblasted and painted. And we're moving ahead. Everything is going well. The Coast Guard was very pleased with their inspection of the whole hull and everything. So, yeah, it's just moving it forward.
I think
Like
we
always
have
does.
I think we have some photos that you sent that we can show on the big screen here, and you'll be able to see. Oh, you didn't? Oh, I take it back. I'm sorry, that did not happen. You might be able to share him, but I don't know if he knows how to do that. That was what.
Yeah, I don't have any photos to share on my computer right now.
Oh, okay, got you. That's okay. So, but everything seems to be going along as you expected.
Yep. So the steel work they have left to do, we have an inspection on the Coast Guard on Friday. We get that checked off. We're planning to go back into the water, have the chief go back in the water on Tuesday. That's the 11th, I believe. And once it's back in the water, things will start coming together fairly quickly. We still have a couple of small minor issues, but they're just minor things that will not affect the overall performance. So as of right now, cross your fingers for the Friday inspection with the Coast Guard for that steel that we're welding back in place. If that all goes well, then we will be well on our way.
Great. Do you do your speed trials in Lake Union, or do you have to take it out in the sound?
We'll do our sea trials in Lake Union, Lake Washington, because going through the locks can sometimes be very time consuming.
Oh, got you.
Like they came down, they made really good time when they brought the ferry down from Lummi Island, but they had to wait at the locks for an hour and a half before they could come through the locks.
Oh, got you. Okay. Okay. Well, great. We're looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting this project done and getting home. 4 weeks is a long time.
I know.
I wish I had a couple of videos to show you of when they were grinding the decks. We had 3 deck grinders going all at the same time. You could not, myself and the welders were and the ship guy were writing on the deck of the dry dock to communicate. We couldn't talk to each other. And then yesterday they were spray painting an epoxy paint on the underside of the hull, and everybody had to wear respirators for all day working on the vessel. So yeah, I'll be glad to get home.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay, thanks for calling in.
Yep.
Okey doke. So next, our council member John Scanlon, who is also the chair of the Public Works and Health Committee. And on the 21st of this month, Director Cosa gave a report to the Public Works and Health Committee that had quite a number of new news items. And John is gonna tell us a little bit about those and a little bit about what's happened after that. Thanks.
Some work or no?
Oh,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
can he use that? Oh, perfect.
But turn it on.
Yeah.
No, I'll listen to the switch. At the very bottom. It'll turn right.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious online. Do we know, are council members Ellen Boss or Donovan with us? I was just curious on the participants. Or they can speak up if they're there. I know Ben joined us remotely last night. We had a council meeting last night and Ben was driving to Kansas to sell some bulls. So he joined us. I think he started out, he was near Baker City, Oregon. By the end of the evening, he was in Salt Lake City. So hi, everyone. I'm John Scanlon, at-large member of County Council. I'm actually one of our alternates.
Yes,
For the committee. I think Ben is the main rep and Todd and I are the alternates. So I try to come as often as I can. I think this is my 3rd or 4th visit in person. I join remotely when I can't come. And today was my first day coming over during dry dock. I've never come during dry dock, so got a chance to take the boat, see what it's like. And as Diane told me, she was hoping it was going to be a bad day. So I got to see a little bit of your life, but it was a nice day. So we got that. I actually spent the earlier part of my day doing a ride along with one of our sheriff's deputies, which was just a great way for me to learn more about their operations. And that's something I've been spending a lot of time doing, is sitting down and seeing the day-to-day work of the people who work for our county and support our community. So I think on one of the trips over here, when Elizabeth was here, I got to go up top in the Whatcom Chief and see what the view was like from up there. And she invited me. This is now a month or two ago. The Public Works Department had an all-hands meeting. They did it at Bloedel Donovan Park in Bellingham. I just got to meet a lot more staff and learn more about their day-to-day operations. So that's how I've been spending a lot of my time, is doing a lot of learning. I think we're going to help with the band. The meeting that we had that Pam mentioned a few weeks ago in my committee, we learned a few updates. And there was one update there in particular for this group that I'm sure you all have heard, was the latest estimate on the cost of the new ferry of being $80 million or more. That was a shock to all of us on council. I had not heard those numbers before, and there was reaction from some council members. And I think one of the reactions that you may have heard was some folks talking about, well, should we go to passenger only in the future? That was not me. That were some other council members who said that. I know what that would do to this community because that's not how you plan your lives. I also had I've had a few conversations with Elizabeth Cosa about that. And for her, from her perspective, she's not planning. She told me to tell you all, she is not planning in that direction. She is fully planning on keeping a car ferry for a number of reasons, those lifestyle reasons being some of them, but also as the department that maintains roads on this island that are county roads, she needs a vehicle ferry to be able to maintain roads on the island. So there are so many reasons why it continues to make sense to have a car or vehicle ferry. So I just wanted to say that from my perspective. Other council members may have other perspectives on that front. I'm one of 7. So I think that's why it makes sense. You know, when you have issues that come up that are where you need to communicate with council, I always suggest to people to communicate with all of us. So we have that council at email. It's council@whatcomcounty.us. Or if you want to do the longer one, it's council@co.whatcomcounty.us. Whichever one you prefer, but it's on our website. When you send an email there, it goes to all 7 of us and to our staff, so everybody sees it. I always think it's important to communicate with all of us because, as you all know, as committee members here, you have restrictions on how many people you can talk with before you meet a quorum, and we have those restrictions as well. So I can't have a conversation on a public works item. I can't talk with my fellow council members. Or with my fellow committee members. So I can't talk with Councilmember Stremler or Councilmember Galloway without having it being an open public meeting. So that's why when we meet, I always try to bring up other things that are going on because that's my way of getting feedback from my fellow council members. So when things come up, I always encourage folks to write to all of us, then we all see it. The other thing I want to address is, you know, as we look at options for financing, I know we're going to get a report from KPFF, the consultants on different options potentially for the ferry, what costs might be able to be reduced. And so I was talking with Director Cosa today, and we'll get that report at our council meeting on July 9th. I don't know if that's going to be in my committee or committee of the whole. I'll work that out with Councilmember Buchanan as far as what's best, but that's when we'll get that latest update on financing. And it'll be Director Cosa delivering that work. I don't know if KPFF is going to come, but I'll check in with Director Cosa to see if they'll be joining that meeting as well. So that'll be the next update on financing.
And we'll make sure we post the link to that meeting on Brown Betty. So if people want to follow and see what they say, it'll be easy because those committee meetings all have a Zoom link.
Mhm. And then the other thing I'm interested in doing and working with you all, working with the committee, working with Public Works, is in the longer run, looking at other options for us as a county. What can we do? Director Cosa has put together a whole list of potential things that we could look at, from potentially joining up with some of the other counties that have ferries, to join up with them to ask for some changes in state law so that we could potentially get some funding that normally goes to counties that have passenger ferries, to see if we can get a change in state law so we can get some more support from the state for our ferries. So that might be partnering with Pierce, partnering with Skagit, partnering with Wakaika. And then the other options that were on that list included a countywide ferry district, a new tax district to spread out the costs and support across the county. There's a whole host of things we could potentially look at that could provide longer term financing for the ferry. And some of those things we would need help on, right? We would need help from the state legislature. So we would need to build support for something like that. If it was a tax district, you'd need all the voters of Whatcom County to vote for that. So a lot of this stuff, we would need support from others to make sure we have better longer term financing for the ferry. But that's something I'm committed to doing. Pierce County had a great model. I think Diane was one of the first folks to share that with me, that Pierce County did a whole study of potential financing options for their county ferry system. I think that's a great model that we could follow. And I think that would be good work for this committee, for Public Works and Council to work on together.
And we did do a study like that in
2011.
yeah, in 2011. And amazingly, and it was a lengthy list, like maybe 30.
There was, I think, 87 recommendations for how costs could be reduced.
And it's amazingly still very current. I mean, it's all the same thing. So it'd be worth I mean, if you want, we can send you a copy of that if you'd like to see it, but
Thank you.
it's-
I'm trying to think if I've seen that. I forget.
I believe I sent it to all of the council members at some point, but that may have been before you came on to the council.
it may be in everybody's mind more now.
Right.
87 different things, exactly. It'd be worth looking at for
Great.
sure.
I think looking at that, right? How do we reduce costs? I know that Elizabeth is also, Public Works is also looking at what would be the impact? What's the financial impact of potentially changing levels of service? And that's a difficult conversation, but I think it is something worth looking into. So at least we know other council members have asked for those numbers. And then, I think that would be something for this committee to discuss, would be, what would that impact be? And I, understand fully that, reducing service at the end of the day, that could hurt certain workers who have longer shifts or different shifts than a 9 to 5. If you want to go out to a show at the Mount Baker Theater, that's gonna be tough. So I think those are all things that we should look at, can look at, both those things that can save money, and then looking at more stable financing in the future.
Right. So John said he would be willing to take questions if people have questions in the audience. So we just need to give you oh, perfect. He passed it to him. Got it.
John, thanks for being here. Regarding the taxing district, I thought that I had read that the council could actually, at an executive council could actually authorize or pass a taxing district without the vote of the people. Do you know if that's true?
I believe that it is.
That is
I-
true.
Yeah, I heard that from Director Cosa, that if the executive directed that he would like to see that happen, the council could vote and they could enact it without a vote of the county.
The limitation is on the amount of tax. When it goes up above a certain limit, then you would have to have a vote. But basically what you do as a council is you create yourself as a ferry district. You are the district commissioners. There's no additional overhead. But you take the political consequences, of course.
And do you know, is that is it a simple majority, or does that have to be a super majority?
As it as it reads, it just says the county council can do this. It does not say by what amount of vote. I can send you that reference.
Thank you. I'd be interested in seeing that and looking into that. You know, the way I think about that issue is I always think, so I live within city limits, but I live towards the western edge of the city. And I think about it as far as, well, I live a lot closer to the ferry than somebody who lives in Maple Falls. I'm more likely to use it. So I always wonder about why is that the case that I'm not paying to help out? Obviously, you know, I live within a city, not an unincorporated county, but I think, you know, there are some things to consider. So I'll look into that. One thing I'm wary of this year, when it comes to any new taxes is, yesterday, the auditor received signatures, and I just saw an email today that there are a sufficient number of signatures that will have an initiative on the ballot this fall to repeal the Healthy Children's Fund, which was passed by voters in 2022, and helps us to expand childcare access and early learning programs across the county. I'm a big supporter of that program. I serve as our council representative to the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force. So I'm going to be reluctant to do anything new on taxes until we know what happens in November. Because council may have to do something else at some point, depending on what happens in November.
All right. Are there any questions for John on more questions here? Jim? Do you have a question for John?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, some of this is a little information. John, you cannot throw the ferry out. A ferry is a road by the state and the United States designation. And under the code of Washington State, you can't get rid of a road unless it's physically impossible to put it back. So you're stuck with it. I have a ton of ideas how to save money. And that thing that they're designing is going to cost us so much money in fuel. It'll be anywhere from 350 gallons a day to maybe close to 500, because we got into the Texas State Ferry things, and they're burning 27 gallons an hour on that same basic hull with diesel electric now, and that's no batteries. So we've come up with a couple of options on that, and I'd like to really talk about these because if it becomes that expensive, we're not going to have anybody out here. And we're already, you know, suffering lack of children, lack of people in the fire department, everything else. You know, this is going to be like going to Martha's Vineyard, except they don't have any movie theaters. And so there's a ton of different things I can think of. The LOS, now that was in level of service. That was done within the Growth Management Act. And a lot of people think,
do you have a question for John? That's what we're trying to do now. This isn't like open whatever. It's open comments. This is questions for John from the Public Works Committee.
And I'd be happy to talk anytime.
Yeah.
that's good.
Oh,
you are. Oh, okay.
if you don't have my,
Hi, John. First of all, I wanted to really appreciate your dedication to coming out here or even making time to come and Zoom and wrap your mind around these really challenging issues. I have a question about the construction period. And I just think that we need to continue to look for options that will not shut down vehicle access to the island for 6 months. That will be a disaster. We're already beginning to see the impact it would have on so many things, including our store, for example, emergency services, and a long list. And to my knowledge, the county doesn't have any budget to help private contractors deliver propane by a landing ship or something like that. So if we could find ways of, for example, mitigating the eelgrass beds, which would, I know, involve a lot of regulatory issues, But I would say that in the end, the cost of doing all of that is going to be less than the fiscal and political and emotional cost of shutting down vehicle access. So I just want to raise this because it does require some leadership council to look into the issue of, is there a way to deal with the eelgrass beds so that the barges can do their work from the outside rather than in the slip, so that chief can keep going. So I guess that's a statement rather than question, other than, what do you think about that?
Oh, nice one there at the end. I didn't make a question. Thank you, Charles. I did talk with Elizabeth about some of this today, and I know one option that's been proposed in the past. I think, Jim, you've proposed this, the Trek as an option. So I did talk with Elizabeth about that, and her response was, I think she said this before, that the last time that bids went out, the Trek didn't. And I know that's her take. I was not there for that. So what I talked with her about as well, could we put out another bid? So for that 6-month period, there could be another bid. And then that would be an option for us to potentially look at what are some of those options to bring in something else other than passenger ferry during that time.
And Jim, I can tell you that I did send the comment that you had in next door to Gary to look at in Seattle, because I wasn't sure if he was looking at that stuff. And he read it over and he thought it would be great to have the Trek be able to do a fit test on the dock. And he said, send it to Liz. So I did that. And she got back to me today and said that she would reach out to the captain and try to make a time so that he could come in to fit test the boat. And then, once he figured out what needed to happen or if it would fit, all of that, he would be more than welcome to bid when it comes open again at the beginning of the year. And then if anytime we had an outage or unplanned thing or whatever, we'd have another option. And she thought that was a good idea. So that is in the works. Thank you.
I'd just like to follow up. Talking about the period of construction, how they never achieve.
Hang on, Charles. So I think we need to use wire. Just went out.
Okay, I'm talking about the period during construction between approximately July and 2027 and January 2028, when the chief hopefully will still be there. So it's not a question of finding a different boat. It's a question of not blocking up the slips 24/7. So whatever boat it is, the chief hopefully could come and go and we could maintain some level of vehicle service. That's the issue. And one solution to it is to have the barges work from outside the slip. And that in turn led to my comment about eelgrass mitigation, which in turn leads to discussions, I think, with the Lummi Nation.
Thank you. I'll check in with Public Works on that to see what the options are. And that might be something that we could ask KPFF to look into, because I would want to know, what are all those steps? What's needed. I'm sure we need some type of waiver and state regulation, et cetera, to be able to do that. So I'd want to know what those steps are. And I think that's something we could lay out to see, is that an option, and evaluate that.
In the March meeting here, KPFF says there was no other option. And I'm just saying that way lies disaster for these.
I believe they have moderated that position to some degree, and it sounds like there's a more wide-ranging discussion of options from what I've heard so far, just recently. And do we have any other questions for John here in the room? And what about on Zoom, Bill? No one's raising any, is there, if anyone on Zoom would like to ask John a question, feel free to raise your hand and Bill will call on you. Nada? Okay. Then anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Rich,
Just want to make a comment.
yes, for John.
It's my understanding that the decision to go with the KPFF recommendation for this 34-car vessel passed by one vote in the then Life Act. Were you on it then, Charles? Okay. And did you have any inkling about eelgrass or those kinds of problems that you're going to run into? That's right. Okay. And how much was the vessel supposed to cost at that point? What was the amount? Well, we had the several different sizes, and my recollection is it was 10 or I think it was 10 or $15 million or something. Okay. And then the third question is, was there any discussion about an extended period of dry dock in order to install the infrastructure to make that? Okay.
I
And
don't
so
think that came up until 2021
Ex-
when there was
exactly-
new
exactly
information
my-
about the eelgrass and
right.
yeah, that's what I thought. We
Okay,
didn't know
so,
about it.
so the point that I'm trying to pick at for people to think about is that if the decision at that meeting had been made with the information that we have now, or if KPFF had done its due diligence with the assumptions about population, with the assumptions about what size vessel would be needed, about what is the point of having a 34-car vessel, that I believe the first thing they said at the meeting where they introduced it was that Public Works had somehow indicated that they wanted the largest vessel they could get that would not require a fourth crew member as a full-time engineer. They never looked at anything about, well, why is this? So why do we want the largest vessel? And the idea was kind of in vague brackets around that, well, sometimes it might have to go to Fairhaven.
Yeah.
Well, have you all heard that? And the fact is, that's idiotic. There's no way that you could do, well, you can all do the math and you can figure out. I drew you a little cartoon back in those days when you're on the committee, and I said something to the effect of, on a short 1 mile run ferry, you want a small boat that goes a lot back and forth. On a longer run, you want a big boat that goes fewer trips, but carries a lot more cars, like the state ferry system. So personally, and this is, I'm not recommending anything, I'm just saying personally, I feel that this place where we find ourselves is largely due to a very incomplete study for what sort of ferry and ferry service the county needed all along, and that right at the moment, I'm certainly leaning strongly towards what Jim has been talking about for years, and that is, given that Gooseberry Point is pretty clearly going to be an endangered landing spot over the next 15 or 20 years, to buy a vessel for what, an infrastructure for what, 80 million? Anyway, so this large number,
Again, so, okay, so
whatever the number is, it does seem appropriate for someone out there to be thinking about the basic idea of, okay, we don't know what's going to happen with climate change. We don't know what's going to happen with population on this island. We don't know what's going to happen for demand for ferry service. By the way, the demographics of the island have already changed, not in the direction that would suggest that we should have a larger ferry, but in fact, in the direction that says we should have a smaller ferry. That's another subject. All that boils down to, I'm very, very skeptical that this vessel is ever going to do anything but,
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
safe to say that all options are really up in the air right now.
right, right. So, color me an unhappy camper about this whole vessel. This whole vessel is a disaster. And what we need, what every public government entity needs to do when climate change is the big thing in front of all of us is consider all the possibilities and do the thing which is we're kind of out of the game of doing the thing that's the best thing for everyone. Now it's a matter of what's the thing we can do that is the least bad under the most circumstances.
Thank you. I think it's safe to say that many possibilities may be coming up in the next few months. Once we have a better idea of what's possible from KPFF, we can, the county will move forward. I know from talking to Roland and to Liz that the county and KPFF and Gary in Seattle are looking at a whole host of options right now, so that they have the widest choices possible once it becomes clear what our options are. So are you, any other comments, John? Are you good? Okay.
Can I just follow up? Is July 9th time when those options are going to be advanced?
Yes, that's what John said, that Liz was gonna make Liz or KPFF would make a report to the council. I don't know if it will be in the council of the whole, in the Public Works Committee, or in the whole council. We'll have to look at the agendas. But when we find out, we'll notify everybody on next door so they can see what it says.
We'll be exploring the range of options, not just talking straight up with the pretty.
No, we don't know.
We don't know.
What we know is that they have been tasked to look at all the possible ways that they could save money on this proposal and still retain the raise and the crab grant. That is what she is going to report on. And based on whatever they find, they will then decide what their next step will be. So we still have a ways to go. So now we're going to move to the committee work.
You had one more question.
Oh, we
you
do?
missed.
Sorry,
Raymond.
I thought.
No, I was just gonna comment that when the size of the ferry was selected, it was based on a set of worst cases that we could see, and that was the worst cases have been magnified and changed now 4 or 5 years later. So it was, the size was chosen quite a while ago, and that was then, this is now, so.
Okay. So so next we're gonna, John kind of covered my report on the 5/21 Public Works Committee meeting update and the revised budget. The revised number that we have heard, but we haven't heard formally, it seems to be in the range of about 87 million for a total. So clearly they have to, make changes and adjust wherever possible and or begin some other planning. But any way that you look at, what's coming down the pike, whether we get a new ferry, another ferry, we repurpose and use the Whatcom Chief, no matter what we do, the docks on the Lummi side, the Gulf of the Lummi side still have to be replaced. They're at the end of their lifespan, and that is still going to need to happen. And it will probably take about 4 months to do that. So we may have some extended periods of outage, which I know they're working on trying to break up if they possibly can. But because of that, the ad hoc committee on Access is still moving forward with their plan. We know, you know, living on Lummi, we could end up with no passenger ferry like we have, I mean, no vehicle ferry like we have now for any number of reasons. The chief could break down. There's no place in dry dock. We end up with a passenger ferry for some number of months. There could be some kind of disaster that would, you know, clearly interrupt everything. And we know that we're going to be looking at some outages for the dock replacement. So because of that, we are going to continue with the access work, taking a solid inventory of what's happening. And Catherine, who is on the ad hoc Island Access Committee, has started some of that work. Do you not want to talk about it?
Well, what we're doing is in collecting the information.
Yeah.
So what the committee is doing is just working with Leica to figure out the structure and what works best. And so at this point, we're trying to coordinate a way to capture the information and to document it and share it with Public Works and with the community in terms of, you know, everything from, we all know gasoline, propane, those kinds of things are way up at the top of the list, but there's a lot of other things that are, you know, going to be impacted. So we're trying to get the structure set up for that. Working with Public Works and Leica and us, and then we're going to be reaching out to and pulling in people that are the leaders of representatives of the different organizations and businesses on the island to talk to their people and really trying to make sure that everybody understands that this is happening, that we're going to be planning for this to be happening, a long-term outage. And it's a good exercise to go through, even if it doesn't happen, frankly. So, which is one reason we're moving forward. So we're going to be at the Saturday, there'll be people at the Saturday market to talk to, you can approach to talk to. We're not quite there in terms of setting up a survey online. The technical pieces of that, we're still working on. We might be sending out mailings to everybody that has property on the island or something of that sort, just to make sure that everyone is aware and thinking about this and hopefully participating. And then we'll be also doing some sort of we're planning on some sort of public event where, again, we can just kind of get the ideas on the table and make sure, and just making sure that everyone has an opportunity and in a variety of ways to participate in the process. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, and we may have the assistance of a couple of community community health graduate students from Western. In working with the island, the Health and Wellness Committee on Lummi Island, and Peace Health, she works with the graduate department at Western, and every summer she has 2 interns to use. And so this would be the kind of community health project that they would normally use. And they would be available to the 2 interns 40 hours a week for 8 weeks, like till the middle of August. Yeah. So it could be a lot of manpower to meet with people on the island to help develop the tool, to flesh out all the things, and then start to build some of the, you know, ways to think about how to solve the issues that we come up with. So we're hoping by the end of August that we'll be able to have a community meeting and they can do a report out on what they've built so far. And it will be a tool that Leica can use, the county can use, we can all use, so that we can, you know, we can see all the different topics and then all the different ways to solve the issues that we've got. So we hope that it'll be an interactive tool that we can all use and then see, and we can use it for a lot of different reasons. So that's what so you may hear a lot more about this summer. You will hear a lot more about this summer. And again, every Saturday market, we're sharing Leica's been kind enough to share their booth with us. There'll be a representative from the Ferry Advisory Committee there, and you can come and talk about what you're worried about or thinking about, or things that you've thought of that you want to make sure we've captured on the list. So we'll look forward to seeing you this summer. The
Good
next,
idea.
pardon me?
Good idea.
The next ad hoc committee that's been meeting is the Ferry and Terminal or Ferry and Docks Committee. And Kurt Eschfalt, who's a community member on that committee, is going to give a little report about what we've done so far. And so can he just sit next to you, John? Would that be okay? There we go. And this is Kurt Eschfalt.
Good evening.
Thank you, Kurt. You can move the microphone closer if you need to.
Okay. The advisory committee asked the ad hoc committee. Okay.
Yeah, you have a soft.
Okay, the advisory committee asked the ad hoc committee to confirm the design of the ferry currently being used or being designed by the county. We met with Elizabeth Koza on the 20th, and these comments are a kind of a summary of what is being designed. And I'll just read them off. Tom is not here, so I'm speaking in his behalf. And Pam was in the meeting, Tom Philpott and I. And these comments by Elizabeth were brief because we only met for an hour. So I'll just kind of read off the main points. The 180-foot hull and deck house design remains the same as shown in the previous conceptual ferry drawings. So we're still talking about 180 feet, talking about 34-car ferry, same width and so forth. That's fixed. A diesel electric hybrid propulsion system is currently being designed. And that system, it will be designed to accept additional batteries at a later date for all electric propulsion, which means that there are a few batteries on board now that make it a hybrid vessel. So you call it a diesel electric hybrid, but for full electric, she is looking at a design that will have adequate capacity to simply add additional batteries for all electric. Until a PSE transmission upgrade can be completed that allows Lummi Island onshore charging, onboard diesel-driven engines will provide the propulsion power for the ferry. The interim propulsion will be diesel-driven generators. There is a small battery pack, but again, your main power still is a diesel system. Elizabeth feels at this point that the fuel consumption of this diesel electric hybrid ferry will be comparable to what the Whatcom Chief now burns.
No.
Okay, now, again, these are things that she has currently reviewed, and I am just repeating what she has said. The current design will include one conventional diesel engine that will provide emergency power and long-distance propulsion, for example, if it has to go to yard. This differs, obviously, from the original drawings that were given to the island that were conceptual drawings. Whatcom County Public Works is aware of potential ferry design concerns that have been raised in a lawsuit between Miller Bay Boat and Elliott Bay Design. The reason that is important, and Elizabeth knows about it, is that there were structural, vibration, and trim issues, among other things, that are currently being litigated. And that's an Elliott Bay lawsuit. We touched briefly on terminal construction timing and how within the phases that KPFF is proposing, we can slip in the Whatcom chief to serve the island. And we made Director Koza aware of a construction technique on the construction barges that allow that vessel to be pulled out nightly, which means if the construction on the terminal allows it, Gary, at his, approval, could slip the vessel in on the weekend if it's a 6-day construction period, or even after the crew stops their 12-hour period, maybe even if it's an essential delivery, they could even slip it in overnight. This is a standard procedure, and I have given contact information to Director Koza for the company that I personally worked with that did this every night. So it's a standard procedure. And I'm hoping that what this will do is take some of the sting out of the long construction period. So we did that. We did not have time to talk about hull modeling or hull optimization, kind of standard reviews of ferry hull design. We did not have a chance to talk about Gooseberry onshore charging right now. There seems to be the absolute assumption that Gooseberry would not work. But when you look at the limited footprint of the charging station that would be provided power for the Guaymas ferry, you realize it's not a big footprint. And perhaps that would save the 9 million plus that they're talking about for transmission lines brought over to serve for charging on the Lummi side. Again, the Guaymas ferry seems to be able to be designed to be able to accept one side charging on the Anacortes side only. Perhaps we should look again at Gooseberry. But again, these were brief discussions, and we did not talk about things like battery life. We did not talk about project costs. This was the day before the meeting with the council. So we were able to be a little bit unencumbered by that shock. We did not receive updated vessel drawings, which we've been working on conceptual drawings for 4 months now. And so this kind of remains difficult for the subcommittee to really look at what we're being told. But again, maybe we can get copies of those soon.
Yeah.
So that's what we discussed in that hour. And there were other things we touched on, but I think these were the high points of it. So,
Thank you, Kurt.
okay.
So just could you say a few words, what's your overall take on the things? It sounds like some interesting stuff you're kind of coming up with. So
Can you talk? I can't,
Okay,
none of us
so-
can hear you.
So it sounds like a lot of very interesting ideas being cooked up there.
Yeah.
Should we be optimistic about those things? Is there space to be optimistic? Cautiously optimistic?
What Pam and I have discussed, and Tom, is the ad hoc committee would like to meet with Director Koza and look at the options that they are considering, and perhaps have an opportunity to suggest options or variations on options that might be available. I realize the timeline is pretty short, and that, am I optimistic? I'm only optimistic if we can be a part of developing the options that are available. And many of them include ideas that people in this audience have already mentioned and are aware of, and we would just.
Mary, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I'm a little unclear about, you said it was going to be a hybrid
Yes,
drive, and my understanding of a hybrid drive would be an electric motor that
yes,
is powered by a diesel generator.
Yes.
right. This is a,
And then that could eventually become a battery and shore power plug-in.
right. This is a diesel electric hybrid, which means that you're going to have a generator providing the power. You're going to have electric motors on your shafts.
Yes,
You're going to have a battery system
yes,
that can hold power.
yes.
What Director Koza is hoping to do is get, for example, her battery rooms, her fire systems, all the components necessary, including the controls and all of the integration that's required to simply put in more batteries
Yes.
in her bank. Now, that obviously because we have only received this $87 million estimate, we do not know what the breakdown is of the vessel cost yet. And once we get the details, then we can understand a little bit more what she's facing, problems she's facing.
My question is, so you said a diesel hybrid, that's my understanding.
Right, the batteries make it hybrid, yeah. Yep.
But then you said we'll have a diesel engine as well.
Yes, yes.
And so are we saying a diesel generator?
No,
Or are we
no, no,
saying
it's a standard,
diesel
it's,
gen-
yeah. And in my notes, I say it's a standard marine inline diesel driven engine as a backup.
The backup engine, like if you're taking
Yeah.
it to Seattle.
Right,
Well,
or
the
for
generator-
emerg.
The generator's on board, and you have the fuel for the generator, you can go all over the place.
Or
until
maybe
you run
it's
out of
only,
fuel.
maybe, I could be wrong, maybe the backup
That's
is
what
just
I'm not
there, if the
understanding.
system breaks down, there's a
the-
backup. She
it's-
said that there was, she did say, remember Kurt, she talked about redundancy.
Right,
She said there was a high level of redundancy on the boat,
right.
so that you would never be without power, no matter what happened.
Right. Her concern is that if there is an electrical failure in the diesel electric side, that you still could get your vessel back to dock, you could get your vessel to the yard at the moment without charging. She feels that getting it, for example, to Seattle would be very difficult. You would have to tow it because you couldn't generate enough onboard power for that length of run. So, well,
I'm sorry.
again, I am simply saying what she's saying. I happen to agree with her that I like the redundancy to have a traditional marine engine as a backup. I think that's prudent. If you had to make a long run to Bellingham for some reason, for example, you would have the power.
And a lot of boats have a go-home engine, you know, there's a big, and that's basically what
Yeah.
that is. That's what you've got if the rest of the system.
But let's not
Right.
spend
Yeah,
tonight.
whatever.
Yeah, let's not spend tonight too much talking about this. This is just what the design is. And it is probably subject to change. We have not seen what KPFF, we have not seen what Elliott Bay. We're only working on conceptual drawings. We have drawings that go back to 2020. So we don't let's wait until we get some drawings, wait till we get some more confirmation. I'm just saying, I'm trying to say what she says the design looks like. And not right or wrong. I'm just, that's all I'm saying. Raymond?
Raymond, I would just encourage for your next steps to be to reach out to Gaylis, to be very clear about what, reach out to Guaymas to be clear about what they were required to add to their all-electric boat before it was approved by the design was approved by the Coast Guard. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Okay.
Jesse? Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Upset, Kurt. I think
All right.
there's one more question.
So Pam, just wondering, Kurt, is there any way that they can make the boat generator and then retrofit it for a battery for later on? And we're still okay? And save costs at the same time?
No, I didn't.
Be more specific about what you're asking, would you please?
Like, is there any way that they can make the new ferry with diesel engines, but retrofit it for batteries for later? So
Yes, that is certainly an option. You could make a platform that has the engine space designed to accept electrical components for an all-electric ferry. You could put in a conventional marine drive engine on either end, and you would be off and running. It would be much less costly. Whether that would meet the raise grant and the crowd, grant concerns, I don't know. But it would certainly be one option to consider, that you had a platform that was designed to accept electrical components later. Yes.
Can I?
Okay, Diane?
I'd just like to add to that. If you don't, in the initial go, afford the integration systems, then when you come back to it in 10 years or 30 years, the cost will be extraordinarily large to try and retrofit. So I think there is some purpose. And I've seen floating around ideas of like buying a used vessel. And I think what we should be concerned about is not just the immediate costs, but the life cycle costs.
Okay. Okay, one more question, then we have to move on because we have a hard stop at 7:40.
And this is relevant, I think, about the boat as well. But one of the things, I looked in on the Public Works and Health Committee meeting, at which time the sticker shock was mentioned. But in that same meeting, before the sticker shock, and after you already knew that there were extreme cost increases for the jail, Director Koza reported that there were two other very significant cost issues that Public Works was facing. And I think we want to know these things, and it was reported there, but I think we need to know these things so that we can put what we talk about in context. Would you please report to us those two big things? One had to do with the shops and the other with burial grounds.
Thank you, Bob. And the item you mentioned in the jail was a projection from another council member, but I think a likely projection, just the idea that I think it was Councilmember Donovan, who said, if we're seeing this with the ferry, we're likely going to see this with the jail. I agree. I mean, it's inflation, right? We know, we all see it. So I think it's just something for us to be aware of. So the other two items you mentioned that we heard from Public Works. So one, there was an issue in Point Roberts with a Public Works crew that was out, and they got into some remains. So in those items were moved off site. So there's all kinds of mitigation that has to occur. So Public Works is in conversations with Lummi Nation on that. And there's going to have to be all kinds of mitigation on that. And that's going to cost money. So that's one thing. And then the other item was at Northwest and Smith at the county, the maintenance shop there for Public Works. There are some older tanks, gas tanks there that have some leakage. So there's some mitigation going on there as well. So these are unexpected costs for the county that Public Works gave us a heads up on. I was not aware of these things until they came up in the committee. And I think it just goes to show that with any major project, right, we got to make sure that we have good folks who have good project management experience, and that we have good oversight from the public, from council, making sure that we're scrutinizing every single dollar of spending, so that we can keep costs down for all of us as taxpayers.
I just wanted it to be known that Public Works has other unexpected big ticket items
Yeah.
beyond fair.
Both issues were over $1 million. One of them was likely 2 or more. The EPA abatement that's going to be required at the central shop is significant. There's runoff issues, catchment issues, treatment issues. It's going to be a big job. And it's unclear how much, will happen. But one of the council members did ask Director Cosa at that meeting, before she even mentioned the ferry, she said, well, so will these project costs impact plans public work projects that you have planned for this year and next year? And she said, absolutely. So the county is definitely dealing, with a number of issues just besides the Lummi Island situation. And it was good for all of us to hear, everything that was happening.
Can I make one more?
Pardon me?
One more comment. Wait.
You've got Rich and you, okay, and then we're done, that's it, okay.
I just want to remind everyone that Public Works has a gigantic budget that includes all of the flooding and all of that. But the ferry itself is about 6% of the Public Works budget. But the unincorporated area road fund, which is what supports the ferry, gets about, I can't quite remember if it's 23 million or $26 million a year. So that has to then cover all of the road projects in the county. And although the Public Works Department budget is huge, the unincorporated road fund is extremely limited and is getting more limited every year as more and more of the businesses and tax producing entities become parts of the cities
When they
instead of
incorporate,
part of the county. So the unincorporated road fund budget really is quite a limited budget.
Rich,
Just briefly,
the microphone.
there's a growing literature about how enormous portion of the expected damages from increasing climate change damage is going to have to be borne by state, local, county governments into the foreseeable future. And that it's going to be it's going to be a problem that every local, state, county government in the country is going to have to be dealing with, including us. So there's going to be a lot of damage and hustling to figure out how the heck to deal with it. It's a very scary set of problems.
Thank you. The county council was definitely feeling the pressure to manage, the vast responsibilities of Whatcom County economically. It's a big job, and we really appreciate the work you're doing because it is not easy to be thrown, constantly all these different things out of left field, that weren't even considered, it's just a constant adjustment. And we appreciate the work you're doing. I know it's difficult.
What I signed up for.
There you go. Okay, so moving on. We want to have a quick discussion. We did not actually make a formal move, to move and second, to move our meetings to the fourth Wednesday, starting in July. The second, or the first Wednesday is also the Grange meeting, so we're missing all those people in our community. The discussion we had was the fourth Wednesday would work for, I believe, everyone in our committee. So do I have a motion?
I move that the regular meeting of the Ferry Committee be the fourth Wednesday of the month
Do you have a second?
Starting with,
in July.
In July. Second?
Sure, I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move the meetings to the fourth Wednesday, starting in July. All, shall I call the roll, or can I just say all in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, discussion, right. Any discussion about this issue? We've discussed it a couple times. You're not on the committee, Jim. Oh,
audience questions?
oh, no. Can you not come on the fourth Wednesday?
No, I just want to be clear. So that would be the next meeting, would be the fourth Wednesday in July
Yeah.
would be the next meeting.
Yeah, that's when it
Okay.
would start. The 24th. I believe that's the 24th. Okay, all in favor of moving to the fourth Wednesday starting in July, signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
All five have voted. Is Carol there to vote, Bill?
Yes.
Good. Thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We had some initial discussions about holding for
Oops.
July. Pardon me? Oh, I take it back. Now Diane, I'm sorry, we added Diane in right before that area.
We had an inquiry into council staff, public works staff, about what are the terms of the committee members. And just as a, for instance, Jill was the one who, at the time the council appointed us, said to Pam that she had a 3-year term. But the new information that we just got is that Pam's term is up this January 2025. Well, I looked at the dates. Out of 9 committee members, 5 of us are up in January of 2025, 2 in 26 and 2 in 27. What makes it even more difficult is one of the committee members who would be in 26 is our vacant slot. So in other words, we would be continuing on with 3 members. I don't think that was what the council had in mind. I think it was because of appointing so many at once that perhaps it got
To fill
confused.
outstanding.
So
Yeah.
I would make a motion that the committee itself, that we send a letter to the county council inquiring as to whether or not the terms could be adjusted so that 3 end each year. And that is a motion for us to do that formally, if someone wants to second it.
So Diane has made a motion that the committees send a note to the county council asking them to adjust the terms so that there would be 3 expiring each year. So that there would always be at least 6 tenured members on the committee to keep the work moving forward. Is there a second to that motion?
so I'll second the motion so we can keep talking about it.
Pardon me?
I'll second it so we can keep talking about
Okay,
it.
so
Uh, So what comes up for me is that
thank you.
Thanks. So what comes up for me is that the issue here is not so much about whether it's 3 at a time or something else, but that we do want some kind of gradual turnover so that there's always some experience, a fair amount of experience on the committee. That's the goal, right?
Yeah,
So I'm okay with the number you suggest. And we'd see what anyone else thinks, but also we have a council member here at hand, and so I think it's as effective just to say, this looks like a problem, and we think you guys ought to look at it. But sure, I'm good with it.
John?
I have a question. So the way it's currently written, are there term limits?
Yes, traditionally in the former Life Act and now with this committee, the council established 3-year terms. And the former committee had 7 members, so that it was 2, 2, and 3 as far as, you know, the
Expiration.
sequence of when your term was up. But right now it's 5 and 2 and 2. As so every 3rd year, 5 would expire.
And are there limits on how many terms you can serve?
You can only serve 2 terms in a row. It has to have at least a year break before you can come back. The exception of that is if someone is appointed to fill an unexpired term, then they still could get 2 full terms after that.
Okay, thank you. I see the issue. And I know, Diane, because you're so good at this. If you have suggested language,
There you go.
that then makes it easier on me to bring something up.
Okay,
I'm gonna ask you that. If it would help that we sent a letter, we would
Yes.
be happy to do that.
And with specific suggested language would be helpful.
Got it.
So this would end up being a code change, right?
no, there's nothing in code. It's just, the issue is just when the council appointed members, they didn't specify when the term ended. So unless it was filling an unexpired term, they're all now, for whatever reason, I
problem-
think it was just a mistake.
The problem
myself.
was that some people were already expiring, and then many of us filled unexpired terms, so that all of that added up to 5 at one time.
Okay, I recall we made a similar change with another advisory committee where there was a similar issue. And I recall the way we did it. So you're already in touch with Jill Nixon on this?
Yes, we ended up we no longer relate directly to Jill. We went through Mandy.
We went through Mandy, who reached out to Jill, and she gave her the dates.
Okay,
And that's when we figured out we were gonna lose 5 people in January, and that's probably not ideal. And so we can send you some language to fix that.
and bring Mandy in on that, because
Yeah,
Mandy might have another way of us potentially being able to
fix it.
do this in
Got it.
an easy way.
Got it.
But I recall we did this at a recent meeting. And it was a pretty easy fix. Everybody agreed.
Okay, I'll go back and look. Thank you. Okay.
So can we vote?
Yes, so we have a motion, and it's been seconded by Rich to send a letter to the council with language about how to adjust the 5 open positions that will happen in January 2025. All in favor signify by saying aye or putting your hand up.
Aye.
And Carol, so that passed unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. So at this point, open session is happening, although everyone seems to have had a fair amount of good. Oh, well, yes, let me just grab it. So, Public Works has finally, luckily, hired an assistant for Director Kosa. And so they onboarded, I believe, a week and a half ago or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, a new assistant director. Her name is Laura Froelich. And she will have lots of different duties, but she is going to be in charge of the ferry system. Liz will still be handling a lot about the new boat and that kind of stuff because that's her expertise. But Laura will be handling the administrative part of the ferry system. She will be Gary's new boss. And so we were thinking that it might be a good idea to meet her, since she would have a lot to say about what's happening. So you can look for what is coming up, but we were thinking that we might have a little open house or reception on July 29th. And invite Laura to come out, excuse me, July 24th, and invite Laura to come out, but we have not checked with her yet, so we'll see. But that may be part of what happens on the 24th. Yeah, at the regular meeting time, part of it, either before or after, or some, we're not sure, but I think it would be a good idea to meet her, get to know her, have her come to the island, see what's happening, you know what I mean? Because she'll be a big part in all of our lives. Now, there's only one person signed up for the open session. That was Bob Anderson.
And one,
And
Chris Coburn, remote.
oh, gotcha. Okay, so Bob, do you want to go first, and then we'll have Chris?
I can do it.
Yes.
If somebody on the line wants to-
Open session. Oh, do you want to, do you want to? You're the only one who signed up on the sign up sheet, and
Okay.
so next we'll go with Chris.
I
Okay,
actually have a question first. If you could hold the 3 minutes, I have a question for the committee. And that is, I wonder if you would consider starting your meetings at 5:30 so that there's not this racing for the ferry exercise that goes on, and would allow a little more freedom for the community to be engaged in the meetings. I see you're doing pretty well on time today, but is that something that the committee, particularly those who come from off island, are interested in entertaining?
Are there thoughts for any other committee members about a 5:30 start time?
Okay.
Am I on?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm already leaving home at 4 o'clock or a little after 4 in the afternoon to get here on a 5 or 5:30 ferry, to then leave on the 8 o'clock ferry and to get home a little before 9. So it kind of, that would put me that much earlier. It feels like a big ask for the people coming from off island.
thank you, Carol.
I think it's failed to gain any popularity. It's okay with me. I'm not wedded to it. I just noticed some of the earlier meetings when there was a scramble and the person from Public Works had to leave and unplug the equipment, and it just was, anyway, forget it. Bad idea.
Okay.
I'm against it too.
Now
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to read this to get into 3 minutes. A little over a month ago, I expressed disappointment at this meeting in the outcome of the ferry code revisions. I believe that disappointment and frustration was shared by not only this committee, but the community at large. But now it's time to move on, to plan for the future, and to solve the really gnarly problems that lie ahead, which you've covered tonight. My greatest hope is that all parties in the messy and conflicted process we've all been through in the past year will find ways to improve the one thing that seemed to be missing at crucial times: good, direct, honest communication. I know that WCFAC leaders are working on this, that Councilmember Scanlon is doing a lot to bridge some of the divides, and I'm hopeful that Public Works leaders are ready for a reset to rebuild the trust that was impaired and at times broken. I appreciate what the committee is working on and engaging the community in its efforts so sincerely. We see it in action here tonight in the way ad hoc committees have been populated with community members as well as WCFAC representatives. We see that intention to engage us in the planning for an open house town hall kind of thing that's coming up. We see it in the efforts by WCFAC members to get closer to Public Works in the planning process for an open, to get closer for that new ferry, whatever it may become. In a very real way, we are all in this together. The community, WCFAC, Public Works, the county executive, and the council. And we can learn from the past that this active engagement strategy and a sincere commitment to open communications is going to make the road ahead much easier to navigate and for sure more satisfying. Finally, I'd like to say just a few words about the pending litigation, the Peter Earl lawsuit. I realize this is not within the purview of WCFAC, and not an agenda item on your work plan. I don't expect that. However, I do have a few observations that I would like to make. First, I think that many of us in the community are grateful that the issues raised in the lawsuit are going to get an airing in a neutral setting, Superior Court. The support from the community has been remarkable. Over $21,000 has been raised to date to support the work that lies ahead from 154 donors, ranging from $15 to $1,000. This groundswell of support is evidence that Islanders want to get to the bottom of these issues once and for all. Whatever the outcome, which may stretch into the fall, we can hopefully put these significant issues and conflicts behind us. And in the meantime, we need to keep our focus on working together on the big issues surrounding the new ferry or some alternative. I'll just say in closing that genuine collaboration and communication are really, really important now. We could all get, sort of sanguine about this. We could get discouraged about it, but it's an excellent way to encourage innovation and creativity, which is sorely needed as we look ahead at issues we have to solve. Kurt, your comments tonight are evidence of the community making a contribution to new ideas. So I just hope that the spirit of what I have to say here is something that we can all embrace. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Dickinson and then Chris Coburn.
Okay.
Okay, Jim, you got 3 minutes, so I'm gonna turn my thing. Okay. Oh, Jim is gonna get the microphone.
Okay, now,
Okay, I'll start.
I spent a long time at the Vehicle Research Institute in Western. And I still have 2 professors who are friends of mine. And I ran all this stuff by them. Right now, the Whatcom chief burns 142 gallons a day average if you stick to the runs. If you were to buy the old State Ferry Highview, and it would burn 139. If you were to go with a good solid diesel boat between 150 and 155. Now, this is with a good hull. The Texas State Ferries, they have one that burns 18 gallons an hour. It's a diesel boat. Now, this shows you how inefficient that hull is because it burns 342 gallons a day. They have one that has a diesel engine and it'll only diesel electric, and it burns. And are you ready for this? 464 gallons a day. Every one of those gallons a day, every one of those gallons is going to put out the same amount of pollution. So you can see what we're looking at here. So, in the hybrid boat that we're talking about, on there, as I can think, is between 360 and 450. And that doesn't get you anywhere. And that doesn't also count the non-point pollution of cogeneration plants and everything else that they're having to put up. And plus, electricity is not going to be free. Okay, so what I want to say here is I would like to, I'm looking at this design, and in 2008, we had what we call the egg beater design. Can we stop them spending any more money on this design? Just stop it, because what it looks like is we're going to end up with a giant turkey if we do it. The hull's inefficient. They've put every bell and whistle in the world on it. The engines are actually too small. You're going to wear them out about every year and a half. I know that. We need much bigger engines to keep that thing going. And if you want to put one engine on, you're going to be looking at about 1,500 horsepower, maybe 2,000 to keep that thing going. You lose about 35 to 40% in the charging of discharging batteries. And then you get another bunch, probably about 10% in the motors. Okay. This is just a cost of opportunity. The old Crate Highview is in great condition. It's available for $1.8 million. And it will burn, like I said, 139 gallons a day, taken from the state ferry log.
Thank you, Jim.
Well,
That's great. Your 3 minutes is up, and I can tell you that Gary did tell me while they were down there, they were gonna be looking at everything, including the Hayou. So there are many different things on the table right now, so thank you for your comments. Moving ahead, I believe we have one person in the field. Bill, is that right? Chris Coburn?
Yeah, Crystal, I mean.
Thank you.
Ask him to unmute. I don't know if you can hear me.
Pardon me?
Can you hear me?
Unmute.
Oh, could you
Unmute.
unmute?
I just did it on my screen. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I just have very brief comment. This is really nice community discussion. I have a main comment that's directed at Councilmember Scanlon. And that is, so there's a legal process against the county. And there's also a GoFundMe fundraising effort on the island to support Peter Earle's effort to take the county to court. My question, especially directed to Mr. Scanlon, is he willing to trust that advisory committee members, one or more, may contribute to that campaign? To me, that seems like a serious conflict of interest. And I think it's something that the county needs to look at. And that's all, really. I believe one or more of the advisory committee members have contributed money to that GoFundMe campaign. That seems like really a bad thing. Very much a conflict of interest, and it's not good for islanders. That's all. I'm done.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have any comment? You don't have to, but
I know what my conflict of interest rules are as a council member. I don't know what yours are, as an advisory committee. But I think that's something where if someone in the community has those concerns, the proper place to send those concerns would be the county prosecutor's office. If you, and you could get some advice as to whether that is a conflict of interest. And the chair could potentially, Pam, if you were
Reach out.
interested, you could ask that question, because it would be the prosecutor's office, the civil division,
fine.
is the one that could give advice on the conflict of interest question.
I'm curious, could you contribute to a lawsuit against the county? You said you know your own conflict of interest.
I'm pretty sure I could. I mean, there's nothing that prevents me from donating to anything. The question is more, is it smart for me to do so? And do I want to do so, right? So the only conflicts of interest for me would be things like if I was voting on a contract that was for a family member, my wife has a local business, right? If the county was contracting with my wife's business, I would have to recuse myself from that. But generally with donations, there is not that issue. I mean, we can all give political donations. We can all give donations to nonprofits, GoFundMe. So, I
So
mean,
it's more around voting, how your personal interest, your voting would be
right.
affected by your personal interest.
And that may be, so for example, when I have asked, so county council, there's a lawyer in the civil division of the prosecutor's office who advises the council as council and individually as council members. I did have an issue coming up. It was a few weeks back. I had, there was what was it? It was an advisory committee. My cousin's father-in-law was the person up for an advisory committee. And I asked, because I didn't know, I was like, well, what's the definition of family? And he's like, I think that's pretty far removed. You know, if it was your spouse, your brother, your child, your cousin's father-in-law,
You're good.
he was the only one. It was a 7-0 vote. He was a good guy.
Okay.
So there's stuff like that. But I think if there is a question that does come up, it would
can
be the
certainly
civil
reach out and
division
ask them.
that would have the
Absolutely.
best advice.
Okay,
on that.
that's great. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to a close so we have time to get our off-island members back to the walk-on ferry. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you next month on the 4th Wednesday.